99% of agencies have the same problem. They can't scale because scaling an agency generally requires you to hire more people, which means more work and more stress without necessarily more profits. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are actually ways to scale an agency without driving yourself crazy. So today, I'm gonna walk you through a set of very concrete steps for you to follow so you can turn your headache agency into a company that you can scale profitably. So here's where a lot of agency owners go wrong, is that they are everything to the agency and everything to every single project, where they are the salesperson, then they onboard the client, then they're the ongoing client communication, they're the account manager, they're the project manager, they're the person that reviews the creative, maybe even doing the creative. They are so directly involved in every single piece of the business to allow for the project to actually be delivered. Micromanaging every single component of the business is creating a huge block in your ability to be able to grow your business. The predominant mistake here is that you are not prioritizing. You're not actually effectively delegating to your team. So what I want from you in this conversation right now is to recognize what components that take you from the technician to the business owner, where you are right now, and the things that got you to where you are now is not gonna take you to where you need to be. You have to change your actions in order for you to be able to get to where you wanna go. You are here, right at the center of your agency. And then in order for anything to get done, you've got your project management team, you've got your creative team, you've got your sales team, your BD team, and you've got another project manager. And every single day, they are coming to you with problem after problem after problem. And in order for this PM to get back to the client, this creative team to work on a design, this sales team to be able to get out a proposal, and this PM to be able to work on the creative with the team, that they have to go through you in order to get to where they need to be. And here's the piece, is that you at the center are always going to be aligned. And it's incredibly important that you recognize that you do not need to be involved in every single piece. What if you didn't actually have to be involved at all? And the PM could go directly to the client once they have a framework that allows for them to be able to manage the things effectively. It's incredibly important for you to be able to start to train your team on exactly how to manage these things where you do not need to be involved, where you're able to manage things proactively, become that master of delegation. And it's just the beginning. I want to share a little bit of a story of a friend and colleague that was in a place that was incredibly frustrating. The story that he told was that he was on the can and he received a text message from one of his team members asking, "Do you have a moment?" And this guy describes himself as a pretty even-keeled, really happy person, but in this moment, lost his shit. He had been in a place where meeting to meeting, consistently being interrupted, constantly being needed by his team. And his response to this is, "No, I do not have a second. I am just trying to take a shit in peace." And this guy was obviously at his breaking point. The thing that he recognized in that moment was that the way that he managed his clients and his team today was not the way that was going to let him get to where he needed to be. That his team had grown far beyond where he was when he initially started. And this is a place where a lot of agencies get stuck. That they continue to maintain their existing structure as they grow, and it creates a huge bottleneck. So you need to be able to adapt at the different stages of growth. If you really want to be able to grow meaningfully, you have to change the way that your business operationally works. And there's a couple of different operational structures that I want you to think about. So this is where you started off. You had 4 team members, but then you brought on another one and another one and another one and another one. And so now at this point, you have 8 people reporting to you. And you can effectively do this, recognizing that you have both full-time team members and you have contractors or vendors that are involved, not considering all the people that ultimately are talking to you on a day-to-day basis to allow for these projects to move forward. You cannot do it all. It doesn't work in this example. There's a couple of different models that ultimately allow for you to be able to grow. So the first of which is the typical place that you will be between the 3 to 5 million. So under 3 to 5 million, this is what allows for you to be able to grow in an effective manner. Is starting to build a pod structure and having multiple people within a pod, but creating a manager that is often the project manager in charge of that pod. That you have a creative, you have a web developer, you've got a social media strategist, whatever, depending on what it is exactly that you do. So you would have your pods structured by service, by industry, so that you have a clear understanding of exactly what everybody does. And here's the thing that really is impactful here and helpful. When you have a pod of the specific specialties that are needed in order to deliver on a client service, they understand exactly where each project is, understand exactly how things are moving along, and incredibly useful that allows for you to be able to provide the amount of mentorship and the amount of team scalability without having to be the person that answers every single question. Recognizing again, the 4 to 6 team member limitation, that as you get to a certain size, you're not able to continue to grow beyond that. And make sure that you have the pods, and typically at this stage, between that $3 to $5 million in revenue, you're able to then move to a shared service model. And so let me show you what that looks like. And so you have this more traditional model that we were talking about. And so let's talk about what this looks like and how you continue to grow into the shared service model as you get to that size, is that you now are able to manage and elevate yourself to CEO. And then you have your departments and your teams within each department. The very traditional oriented organizational chart that a lot of you are familiar with, that then allows for that hierarchical structure to work. The downside of the shared service model is that you have communication breakdowns, and you have to be incredibly clear on your operational systems and process that allow for you to be able to build the shared service model effectively. The benefit of the pod structure is that that communication is built into the way that the teams actually function. They're so closely knitted together, working on exactly the same projects. They know what each person's working on. They understand where that project currently is, and it makes it a whole lot easier from a communication standpoint. The downside, however, is that it is not as easily scalable. So let's say that you have 2 new projects coming in and your team is currently at a 70% utilized. And you have, in theory, 20% more capacity, but each one of those 2 new projects are going to take up 20%. So now we're at 110% capacity. That means that we have to stem up an entirely new pod in order to be able to grow that. So there's the good and the bad with both models, but making sure that you understand when to utilize it for you. So even the right structure has some shortfalls, as I just underlined. But if these are not well understood and tracked properly, it can create a little bit of havoc. So I want to talk to you about that next. So this agency was in a place where they had lost a client, processes didn't work, they went over budget, and ultimately incredibly difficult situation. And yet they did it all over again with the exact same price point, the exact same expectations, the exact same SOW. Not ideal, right? And this is exactly the place that a lot of agencies are. They don't leverage. And it's incredibly important to understand that you need to be adaptable. In order for you to be able to grow, you're gonna have to be and do things differently to get to the next stage of your journey. The frustration is being able to actually go through and recognize that there's components of what your agency is doing that are not working, and that's your fault. But that self-realization, that self-actualization is incredibly important to be able to allow for you to be able to make those improvements. So what is the framework that allows for you to be able to learn from your existing circumstance? And the vast majority of time, this is really effective in your project closures. Is what were the objectives both for the client and the agency in this project? Were they accomplished? Did they come to fruition? Yes or no? Yes? Great. How do we actually go about doubling down on this and following this exact same process again, leveraging what we've learned? Or in the opposite scenario where the client didn't get the objective or the agency didn't hit the budget hours, what do we need to do differently that allow for us to be able to get there? Was it a budget problem? Did we go over on hours? Was there something that we did from a communication standpoint that had us not have a clear understanding in the creative brief that we needed to improve? Get the team together, the salesperson that was on the account, your project managers, the creative team, the fulfillment team, all together to discuss what possible solutions are there around this? What could we have done differently? And then ultimately make a determination. All right, so in summary, you cannot do everything. You are and will be the primary block in the funnel of your growth if you do not learn to delegate. You cannot do everything, stop micromanaging. And because it is done differently than the way that you would have done it, doesn't mean that it's bad. The other piece is being willing to learn that you need to have the right operational structure in place that allows for both reporting of who your team is reporting to and where do they get the information from. You've got the initial flat structure that the vast majority of agencies start with, eventually moving to the pod structure, and then finally the shared service model. And the end piece is leverage your mistakes. Leverage your situations that come up so you can have continuous improvement day by day, being ultimately adaptable, nimble in your process that allows for your agency to be better with every single project. But the bigger your agency gets, the easier it is to get sucked into tedious work. So check out this video right here where I share the 4 simple steps to help automate the operations of your agency so that you can focus on the tasks that will really drive your agency forward.